Thank you, and thanks for inviting me to speak today. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I just realised this is the first time I've spoken in front of a live audience for 2 years. So in the box, and pretend you're on Zoom. So I'm Steve Brewster. I'm the CEO of Active Herefordshire and Worcestershire. So we were pre-pandemic, just before the pandemic hit, we were about to relaunch ourselves as Active Herefordshire and Worcestershire, and then launch our strategy. And then everyone was shut indoors for several months. So the reason for changing our name is we want people to be active. We want people to move. We don't necessarily, if sport could be the end of that journey, but we want them to move first. So we're not trying to get people from inactive to half marathons. We're just trying to encourage people to move more. And why is that important? Is it just left? Yes. So pretty much there's consensus that physical activity is good for you. But I would argue that it's more than good for you. It actually has tangible health benefits. If you achieve the CMO, the Chief Medical Officer's guidance in terms of being physically active, it can improve. It can address some of those health issues that carry through life. So type 2 diabetes, I mean, I appreciate it's an issue, a growing issue. Being physically active can seriously address that. So it's not just good for you, it is good for you. And what this doesn't cover in such as the mental health benefits of being physically active, that connection with communities, that loneliness, that isolation, being part of a group, not just a team, but part of a group. It could be a walking group. So being physically active is not just good for you, it's really good for you. So a quick quiz. The Chief Medical Officer recommends how much for an adult? How many minutes does the Chief Medical Officer recommend? And you're not allowed to answer. So online, on the Zoom, feel free to put it in the chat. In your average week, how many active minutes are you encouraged to have?
90.
Any advance on 90? Any lower?
30.
150. So the Chief Medical Officer is 150 minutes, decreasing to 75 for vigorous intensity. So I often get the question, what's moderate intensity? So there's some examples of moderate intensity. So it's going for a brisk walk. So meandering around the park is good for you. We want you to move, but actually up the pace a little bit. So you're actually getting a little bit warm, not necessarily breaking into a sweat, but you're actually getting into a warm state. So similar question in terms of average hours for a young person, 5 to 18. So how many active minutes are you encouraged your children or grandchildren to have? So those on Zoom, how many?
250.
250? Any? 60 minutes a day. And that could be as a mixture of school, after school. So it's not just the responsibility of teachers, it's what they do after. And that could be a mixture of walking to school, cycling to school, having active play in the playgrounds. So it's not just about PE. It's not just about shorts and t-shirts and on the sports field. And again, there's the CMO guidance. So last one from me in terms of, according to British Heart Foundation research, how many hours a week does the average adult, are they seated or sedentary? Any guesses? Anything from Zoom? 60. Well, 67 hours a week, we are seated or sedentary. So on that note, I would like everyone to stand just for a moment, stretch. And during your working day, I hope on Zoom you are participating. Just remember, just getting up, walking around and breaking up the day. and not just walking to McDonald's and back. It just really helps. So thank you very much for participating in that. So this is the real test of the IT, is whether...
Yeah, so just give us a second. We need to do some technical work here to make this happen.
Are we good to go?
Yeah.
Okay, fingers crossed.
Herefordshire and Worcestershire, a unique region, a mix of the very rural and very urban. Renowned for our professional sporting heritage and areas of outstanding natural beauty, Herefordshire and Worcestershire forms a perfect landscape for physical activity. 75% of our population is physically active. Our greatest challenge is to demonstrate to our less active individuals, as well as to our females and our young people, that physical activity is right for them, done by people like them, led by people they recognise. We believe that physical activity has the power to change lives. We will work with young people, reaching those for whom physical activity can make the biggest difference. We will support adults with more pronounced physical health needs to increase their confidence, working with partners who will ensure that opportunities in the two counties are attractive, easily accessible and inclusive. Physical activity will be used as a means of building resilience, helping to combat low-level mental health. We will empower local communities to develop sustainable and flexible activities, resulting in an increased sense of well-being. Our work will help to create a thriving, sustainable environment where the people of Herefordshire and Worcestershire can live more active, healthier and happier lives.
I think that sums up who we are and what we do a lot better than a sort of a long presentation. But I will just, if I can unclick that. Oh, you don't want to watch it again. Okay, so like I said, we launched the strategy pre-pandemic. So we are in the process of reviewing in a post-pandemic world what changes we need to make to adapt. And obviously there's a lot of adaptation, a lot of recovery, a lot of getting back into what was before or developing new habits moving forward. So effectively, our mission in life, and there are 12 of us in the office, and we've got Herefordshire and Worcestershire. So we're on a mission, but we need everyone to come with us on this because we can't do it on our own. So the first thing, increased availability and accessibility. So that inequality in terms of access to services it can be translated to physical activity. Can I get to wherever I want to get to? Can I get to the sports field? Can I get to the parish hall? Can I get to the sports centre? Can I get to the park? Is there a park to get to? So increasing the accessibility and visibility. A workforce that inspires, and what that was trying to get to is that people recognise the people that are trying to encourage them to be active. So they're like me. So they are, I mean, one of the things we did with the Clover project is we did emphasize there's lots of people providing lots of really good activity, but our role in that was about making sure that everyone had mental health first aid, that everyone had safeguarding to make sure it was the best environment possible. So it wasn't our job to get in the way and add another layer. It was just really to put our support where our support is needed. So empower groups and individuals, and we've been doing a lot of that around tackling Inequalities Fund, which is a fund from Sport England that we've been lucky enough to distribute locally. And that's mean we've put £250,000 so far into the system across Herefordshire, Worcestershire. A third of that has come to Herefordshire to develop activities. And I'm going to touch on a few projects a little bit later. Target new areas for growth is really thinking about, we're really big on walking at the moment. So we are trying to do all things walking in Herefordshire. And we are just trying to encourage people to move, to walk more. We're trying to establish what we call a walk and talk across some of the talk community hubs, where does exactly what it says in the tin. You go for a walk and you have a chat, and it's improving your mental health, your resilience, your isolation, but you're going for a walk. So we're trying really hard to sneak physical activity in through the side door in terms of you are doing, the primary purpose of your organization is to do this, and we're trying to sneak physical activity in. So why don't you do that whilst being physically active? And partner and influence is where we can, in a strategic sense, get physical activity higher up the agenda, because we know we could do more. And going back to the first slide in terms of those health benefits of being physically active, that's what we're trying to achieve. So we are funded by Sport England, and Sport England, again, have launched their new strategy. And we've been fortunate enough to achieve 2.8 million over the next 5 years to really address these, what Sport England call the 5 big issues. So recover, reinvent, obviously, I think that's everyone's role and responsibility. Connecting communities, looking after our young people and giving them a positive experience, getting closer to health, because I think within the health system, physical activity is recognised as being good for you. Just there's not always the headspace or the headroom or the resources to really drive that. So I think that's one of the things that we are advocates for. And active environments, obviously the climate change agenda, and making sure that the environment that we are being physically active in is sustainable. So that's what Sport England are asking to do. And one of our jobs is to translate that into what does that mean in locally? What does that mean in Bromyard? And that's what we're trying to do in terms of reviewing our strategy. So physical activity habits in Herefordshire. So this comes from Active Lives. So I know there's 40,400 people inactive in Herefordshire, Worcestershire. So 25% of the adult population are inactive. That means less than 30 minutes a week. So if we look at the CMO guidance being 150, they're doing 30 or less. So there's an issue, and we need to address it. The good news is 105,000 are active. But there is where our focus is on the inactive. There is an element of our work is about sustaining those that are already active, so making sure that there's a good infrastructure of sport and things like that. So we want to sustain, but really the focus is on the inactive. And these are our young people. So the 1 hour a day, the 49.2% of our young people are getting there. That means 50% aren't getting there. And some of them are really less than, or really quite low on the schemes of things. So our age range is 5 to I think our oldest participant on PSI is like 95 or something like that. So our age range is quite vast. Our geography is quite vast. Our resources are limited. We would really appreciate your assistance in taking the message in terms of wanting people to be physically active. So through the statistics, and there's more statistics, and I'll bombard you with a few more in a minute, but we know that you are further away from physical activity if you sit in one or more of these groups. So if you're older, you are more likely to be less active. So what are we doing about that? And how can we address some of that? If you're a social economic group, then that's really the most deprived to the least deprived is your inactivity levels are really high. The more deprived areas you are. And there's a range of issues, very common in terms of the statistics that Matt shared earlier, in terms of there are the same issues, but we very much look through a physical activity lens, and the areas that across Herefordshire that are experienced deprivation are going to be no surprise to anyone, but inactivity levels are significantly lower. So yeah, it's a popular slide, isn't it? It's just recognizing that some people need an extra box. And how can we address that? So there's some controversy around this slide, because the next slide is there's no fence. And in a sports world, the next slide is they're actually taking part in the activity. So there are barriers to overcome. And it's just recognizing some people, some populations, some communities just need an extra box. So this is age. So I know through age, the older you are, the less active you become. So how can I get people active? How can I persuade older people to establish the habit early and keeping it going through their lives. So one of the projects that we have supported through Tackling Inequalities is in partnership with Age UK, Herefordshire and Worcestershire. It's about Walking Sports Network. And it started with walking football, but it's now walking cricket, walking rugby, walking netball. And what we're trying to do is establish a network. So there's many opportunities. So you can go to one place, a one-stop shop, saying, I live in Bromyard and want to do walking football. Here you go. Here's the opportunity. Here's the activity. And just trying to establish those habits to keep them going. So walking football, as you can imagine, it's football, but you walk. I mean, it's not brain surgery. It is jumpers for goalposts, and it's relatively low cost. But I appreciate football's not for everyone, so we're trying to widen the portfolio in terms of what's available. And this is where, again, in Herefordshire, the walk and talk, for those that are not really into sport, but just love walking, and having that reason to walk. So are there nice places to walk? Are there nice things to see? Are there heritage walks? Are there walks along the river? Are there walks along in the countryside? So it is really walking is a big thing for us at the moment. And that's the issue we're trying to address with that. It's low impact, low cost, and sort of trying to actually make it for everyone, or as inclusive as possible. And we were chatting earlier in terms of, okay, in the more deprived areas where cost is a barrier, access to facilities is a barrier, how do we overcome those? And so it doesn't stop there, it builds on the foundation. The other issue that we've identified and particularly want to talk about is girls are less active than boys. Even during the pandemic, the boy statistics for being physically active dropped off a cliff, but it never got to the same level as the inactivity of girls. Girls were more resilient through the pandemic because they're less reliant on team sports. So one of the things that we're trying to address in partnership with Stride Active, we launched Herefordshire Can Festival, which was a few weeks ago, and it's about girls only, no boys invited, and it's about just looking at the alternative. And so it's not about netball, it's not about hockey, it's about just having fun in an environment, in a shared space where they're boosting their confidence and boosting their aspirations in terms of what yes, of course I can be active. And part of that on the left-hand side was actually getting their feedback, saying, what do you think? Was that any good? Did you enjoy it? And the feedback's been overwhelmingly positive from teachers and from students in terms of we are taking this back to the curriculum and we're going to look at it and how we reframe PE. But the point of those two projects is really collaboration. We couldn't do it on our own. So Stride Active and Age UK, great partners to work with. But yeah, we have an opportunity in the future and looking beyond, how do we actually get people active? So is there a line of sight to an inequality? Is there a line of sight to physical activity? Tick those two boxes, we're out for a conversation. We have some resources available through the continuation of Tackling Inequalities Fund, but it's more about sustaining the activity, sustaining and embedding the activity and getting the habit, being active, seeing physical activity as not as a chore, but it's something I do. So your challenge for the weekend, and especially as we move to the Jubilee weekend, the long bank holiday, is do something that puts a smile on your face, that is physically active, and that go for a walk, go for a run, meet family, play with children in the park, grandchildren, go for a kickabout. Just do something that's above and beyond what you would normally do to try and get to those 150 minutes. I'm not advocating everyone buys a Fitbit and buys a pedometer and counts their steps every day. That works for some people, doesn't work for others. So it's what works for you is the important thing, and be active. I think that's my 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm happy to take quite a few questions if we've got time.
Yeah, quick one or two maybe. Anybody got a question for Steve?
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks. Jane Roberts, Ross and White Community Development Trust, and which has been running the Clover project. So
Steve, thanks for mentioning Clover. I just wondered whether this might be the moment to mention that there is on June the 9th in this space, there will be an event between 10 and 3:30, which Clover is putting on to review the Clover project, as the funding is coming to an end, but the project is not ending, but also to be looking at ways in which our model of building greater links between social prescribers and community groups in order to improve physical well-being and activity, as well as engagement in creative, leisure, outdoor, and all the other activities that can lead to increases in well-being, how that can actually be sustained and built upon in the future, especially in the context of integrated care partnerships that are coming in. So I just wonder whether now might be the moment to plug that event.
Which I think you've done admirably.
Thanks. Wasn't a question, actually. It's just because I know a lot about this field. One of the things I always find fascinating is that actually the people that get the greatest health benefits are the ones from doing nothing to 30 minutes, isn't it? Yeah. And I think that's a really important point to make. So if we can get those people to do a little bit more activity, they get by far the greatest benefits than somebody doing 100 minutes to 150 minutes. So it's just an observation, really, which I think is quite a key point. Thanks.
One of the things that it's okay in this context, but what we try not to do is 150 minutes is from nothing to 150 is a big step. So doing something, moving more. If you're working from home, ask your employer about a standing desk, and something that's becoming popular amongst our team is standing desks. And if you're on Zoom for a big chunk of the morning, going sitting, standing, and suddenly your legs are starting to feel it a little bit. And it's just little things like that can make a big difference. Going for a walk at lunchtime. We're physically based at the university, and there's a mile traced out around campus, so you don't have to leave campus. So yeah, can you build that into your day? Can you get off that? Can you park further away and walk it? So it's that nothing to 30 minutes is the greatest benefits. But the aspiration is to get you higher up that chart. But we never really go, when we're talking to inactives, we never say, okay, couch to 5K. You've got baby steps to actually get there.
Thank you very much.